You can.
Okay. Murderers, rapists, and other criminals are being released from jail every day after serving only short sentences. These are juveniles who commit adult crimes. They are being tried every day in juvenile courts, and they are receiving shortened sentences, and they are being released, continuing with their lives while their families that they hurt are suffering forever. The courts and juvenile rights believe that second chances should be given to youth who commit crimes. Criminals are walking the streets, living close to us, and then they commit more crimes after they're out. When it comes to trying teens in court, as adults, people say that we should just go easy and try them in juvenile courts, but I think that we should try every juvenile as adults. I think they should be held accountable for their actions. If I knew somebody who hurt or killed someone I love, I would want them to get the worst punishment they can get. Some people believe that we should stop putting teens in adult prisons. They believe we should be easy with them and easier sentences. These people argue that children are capable of learning from mistakes, or they're too young to understand because they're still teens. I think teens, whether they're 8, 10, whatever, I think they know what a knife does. I think you know what's going to happen when you hold the gun or when you pull a trigger. They know what's going to happen. They're young, but they're not stupid. Not many people don't argue with the decision of trying juveniles as adults. With a convicted crime, murder, they use excuses as they're not mature, their brain isn't mature enough, but I think that's just an excuse to save them. These juveniles know what they're doing. When we hear on the news about someone getting murdered, it's kind of common nowadays, but when we hear that the suspect is a teenager, it's a talk everywhere. In 2009, state police found 26-year-old Kenzie Hawk dead in her bed with a bullet in her head. She was 8 months pregnant. The search for her killer ended with the most surprising murder suspect, her fiance's 11-year-old son, one of the youngest suspects to be charged with homicide. According to Ryan Smith at CBS News, if tried as an adult, he faces life, if not 21 years in juvenile jail. A defense psychologist testified that a teenager brain doesn't control impulses in a mature way. If not mature, then they don't know what they're doing, basically. At the end, James Brown, the 11-year-old, was tried as a juvenile. I think as a child myself, I was raised in a family that believed in discipline and taking responsibility for my actions. Some can say morals are learned, others say we inherit morals at birth. Either way, a criminal is a criminal and must be punished as such. Our courts should never allow anyone to get away with murder. These people argue that children are capable of learning from mistakes, like I said before, but I think how can they learn from mistakes if we say, okay, like it's fine, just don't do it again, then they know that it's easy to get off. They say that also drugs and alcohol is another cause of teens getting in trouble because they're around their parents. I believe it's a ridiculous argument because teens shouldn't be drinking or doing drugs in the first place. There are some people who believe they are abused and come out dangerous and more damaged than they went in. But can't we say the same with adults? Because just because they're older, and when they were younger, of course, if they're abused, so don't they have some kind of mental issue for getting into the place they're at, just like a juvenile? I don't think that we should let anyone, whether adult or juvenile, get away with murder. They should take responsibility for their actions. They know what they're doing. They know what a knife does. Everyone knows what a knife does, a gun does. It's an excuse to say that their brain isn't mature enough because they know what a knife does. They know what a gun does. So why should we let them off the hook if they know what it does?
All right, Steve, what did you think?
I think it was a good speech. Like, you stood strong on your point as saying that you believe that anyone that commits a crime should be, punished for that crime. And then I think you should say like I think less. You feel me? Like you just use like facts more, because it is a fact that when you're a kid, your brain doesn't. You don't respond maturely to every subject. Like, kids know what a gun is, they know what a knife is, but your brain is not as mature as adults is. That's why they got the juvenile system, because you make rash decisions as a kid. And like, I'm kind of biased because I was in a situation like that as like a kid. You feel me? And it was just like you black out, like a rash decision. You feel me? So just use like facts more when you just for the audience, you feel me, for people that's looking at it both ways. So you facts, you can't debate with a fact. And other than that, it was a good speech. I like how you stood by your opinion.
Okay, yeah. Well, you're making a value argument here that there's something wrong with letting people off. And I think, first of all, you need to explain why you think that they're being let off. They do get punished. They do get detained. They are held in custody. And they're often given some kind of, treatment or reform process or drug, whatever the heck's going on. They're certainly, I don't know what the story is with this 11-year-old who shot his father's fiance. You don't tell us what happened. It sounds like. It sounded at one point, like you said, he got 21 years. I'm not sure if it was he got 21 years or he was held until he was 21. But let's suppose that that's what it is. He's held until he's 21. Well, that's 10 years in prison, which, I'm not exactly sure what the average time that somebody spends for committing murder in prison, murder is. But you know what? For a lot of murders, that's more than some people get. So it's not like they don't get punished at all or there's no control. Now the question is the punishment sufficient? Is it appropriate? Is it right? And I think you are on the right point there where you're saying there needs to be something more substantial, especially when we're talking about a crime like that. You are kind of in an odd situation because your opinion runs contrary to the predominant view of the judicial system and most people that kids are not, like Steve said, they're impulsive, they don't have the maturity, that sort of thing, that there's a reason that we treat them differently. I think it might be easier to argue that there are lots of just cases where people need to have more adult punishments, because they are engaged in regular criminal activity. They understand the consequences. Their youth is being manipulated in some way. There's a difference between some 11-year-old who's crazy and kills his father's fiance and some 12-year-old who's being used by a gang to carry out assassinations because he's 12, and they figure, well, worst thing that's going to happen to him is 6 years in school learning how to be a better criminal when he gets out. I mean, there's a difference between those kinds of scenarios, and I think there should be an argument about those kinds of things. You've got a very strong opinion at the beginning of the speech. The visualization, I think, is good. I understand the position that you're taking. I just think you need to develop the value argument that you're making a little bit more, and you need a lot more documentation and explanation of it, especially since you're kind of going against the preponderance of public opinion about these issues. So I think you need something more substantive than that. Presentation, why you stand there with your legs crossed the whole time? It's like, oh my gosh, you just look uncomfortable the whole time you're up there speaking. You gotta get into this situation. By the way, you gave me the same evaluation form that I got earlier from somebody else, the prepared evaluation speech. Fortunately, before I'd written more than a sentence, I realized that, and I had a backup, so I jumped on it. But you're still going to get the second one back, just so I can lord it over you. All right, thank you.